In this video, we're going to get a bit nerdy. We're talking about clear cooperation policy. And I tell you what, if there was ever like a poster child for industry jargon, the term clear cooperation policy should be right at the top of that list. It just reeks of corporate jargon. And yet, this is a huge conversation within the world of real estate right now. And you're hearing brokerages and realtors talking about it. There's an active lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors, the ones that enforce clear cooperation policy. This is a big deal, and it will continue to be a big deal. And most of the conversations that I've heard about clear cooperation policy right now are focused on industry insiders. I wanted to create a video that helps you, everyday home buyers and home sellers, really understand, okay, what is clear cooperation policy? What are these debates? Why does it matter to me? And that way you can have an informed opinion as you hear these things come up. So what is clear cooperation policy, or CCP for short? Well, it is a rule that was created by the National Association of Realtors. So every brokerage, every realtor, every multiple listing service that belongs to the membership of the National Association of Realtors must adhere to this rule. And the rule is that every home that is listed for sale, every home that is publicly available for sale, must be listed on the MLS within 1 day of being publicly available. And the goal behind the creation of this rule was to try and make access to homes as fair as possible, as broadly available to as many people as possible. The thing that the National Association of Realtors was trying to avoid was the rise of what are commonly known as pocket listings or off-market listings. And so there was this time where it was very, very common for listing agents to go around and talk with people that were interested in selling their home. But rather than formalizing the home sale and actually getting the house listed, they would just jot down the seller's information, the details on the home, how much the seller was wanting to get for it. And then they would sort of privately market that home, shop it around to their network of agents or clients or buyers, and try and find somebody off market and then facilitate that deal, which sounds like maybe that could be a good thing, but the National Association of Realtors, and I think that they did right here, but they recognize that, hey, this is not actually what's in the benefit of consumers. Sellers do better when more people can see their home, and home buyers have a greater advantage when they get to see everything, every home that is available publicly. The off-market pocket listing really disadvantages home sellers and home buyers alike. That was the National Association of Realtors' argument. So why is this even a debate? Well, big brokerages like Compass, they're probably the loudest voice that is antagonistic towards clear cooperation policy. And their main argument, and I'll admit that this sounds pretty good, their main argument is that, hey, National Association of Realtors, you have no business telling sellers how they have to market their home. Like this rule where you require them to put their home publicly available on the multiple listing service within 1 day of their house being available for sale, you don't have the right to tell them that. So stop it. That's essentially what Compass's argument is. And drilling down into that further, you have to ask, well, why wouldn't a seller want their home on the multiple listing service? And there are a couple really legitimate reasons why a seller may not want that. The first reason is days on market. That as soon as that listing goes live, the multiple listing service is counting how many days that home has been publicly available. And this can be a real issue for home sellers because you know it, right? That once homes have hit 30, 40, 60, 90, 100 plus days on market, consumers start to look at those homes with a real skepticism, or they start to smell blood in the water, whether there actually is or not. There's something psychological about seeing a home that has been on the market for a very long time where you start to just think, wow, a lot of people have passed on this home. There must be something wrong with it. It must be too expensive. People must not like the area. I don't know what it is in our human nature and in our psyche that just causes us to think that way, but days on market is a real issue for home sellers. It's one of the biggest things that you fear, is that your house sits a long time on the market. And then the second piece is that not all home sellers are equally motivated when they want to sell their house. There are some people that they're really casual about it. They don't have to move, and they just kind of feel like, if the right buyer, the right situation came along and they gave me exactly what I wanted, then sure, I would sell them the home. But I don't really want to go through the process of getting my house in perfect condition to list, all of the photos, keeping it perfectly clean, having open houses, having showings, having my home being publicly marketed. I'm not really ready for that. And clear cooperation policy, as it's currently written, doesn't really have a category for the casual home seller. It treats all home sellers like they're extremely motivated and want to sell the home as quickly as possible. So for folks that are much more casual, yeah, they might not want to have showings all the time. They might prefer for it to just be a smaller group of people that are aware of their listing, wanting to move forward on it. And so Compass and these brokerages have argued, hey, we're just trying to do right by our sellers and trying to give them options where they can list their home, where they can do price reductions, where we can test different marketing strategies without there being these public records of how many days the house has been available, with how many price drops we've done. Basically, they're saying we want to give the sellers more control over how they market and list their home, which the MLS system and NAR's rules are too inflexible to allow. And to some degree, I have to admit, there's that argument carries some water. Like there could be a real advantage to that for some folks. But on the whole, I think that the push against the clear cooperation policy is much more selfishly motivated than Compass and other large brokerages let on. Why is that? Well, because what Compass and other large brokerages like them are doing is they're functionally creating their own in-house listing service that you really only have access to if you're working with a Compass agent, somebody that hangs their license with Compass as a brokerage, because they're saying we don't have to send these listings out to Zillow or publicly available sites. I don't know what they're thinking about doing as far as showing them on their own Compass website and what the rules and restrictions are there. But it does make it a lot harder for home buyers, because now you don't publicly know everything that's available. Instead, you're having to work with specific brokerages, whether that's their agent or going to their site and looking for these listings. You're having to go to a lot more places, and you don't have a full idea of what is actually out there in the market. And of course, this is really good for big brokerages, right? Like now, instead of just going to Zillow and seeing everything that you want, you have to go to their webpage through their people, be exposed to all of their branding and their sales pitches, and kind of have to buy into that ecosystem if you want to buy a house that's listed with Compass. And so you can see the money in the CEO's eyes there, like how his eyes just light up green when he's like, wow, now we actually get to create our own little ecosystem that people have to buy into. And that's going to be good for us ultimately. And other big brokerages that have deep pockets and big market share, they see the same thing, right? They have access to a lot of people, a lot of sellers, a lot of resources. And the folks that this really hurts are the smaller, more boutique specialist brokerages, because now for those smaller brokerages, they're not going to have access to the private listings through Compass that are not publicly available on the MLS. They're not going to know everything that's on the market, and they don't have as wide of a reach nor as deep of pockets to be able to create their own competitive limited listing service. So from a anti-competitive standpoint, I think that if we allow these big brokerages to move away from clear cooperation policy, we're going to start to see more monopoly-like behavior from big brokerages, a lot like what we see in like the cable internet industry, right? Like you've got your big cable and internet providers, and it's very, very hard for smaller companies to compete because they just don't have the infrastructure. And of course, we all know what kind of service we get from those cable providers because of the lack of competition. And then strictly from the consumer's standpoint, if I am a home seller, while I understand that there are people that are more casual versus the really serious home sellers, and I also have real hesitations about days on market and price drops and the ways that those, I think, unfairly impact a home buyer's perception of the value of a property. Still, if I'm selling my home, I want as many eyeballs as possible on my house. I want it to be seen and available to home buyers as far and wide as humanly possible. I do not want the pool of potential buyers to be limited to just home buyers that are working with Compass or going onto Compass's website. I want for every person that clicks onto Zillow, the world's largest real estate website, I want for them to be able to see my property. And why is that? Well, more eyeballs leads to more showings, and more showings lead to more offers, and more offers lead to higher prices and better terms for me as a home seller. The bigger the buyer pool, the better it is from a home seller's perspective. And as a home buyer, I want to see everything that's available to me. I don't want to miss out on potential homes that could be a wonderful fit for me just because I didn't know what brokerage's website I had to look at or what agent I had to actually call and talk with. I want for all of that to just be centralized somewhere so that I can see everything that is available. And that's the beauty of, frankly, how clear cooperation policy has worked up to this point, is that the vast majority, we're talking like 99% of the listings, that homes that are available for consumers to buy, you can find them easily online right now. And I think that that is a really, really good thing for home sellers and home buyers alike. And I'm very, very hesitant to move away from that because I don't think that the move is ultimately what's in the best interest of the consumer. I think that it's ultimately what's most profitable for big brokerages, which, let's be real, at the end of the day, that's their number one concern. They're not mainly concerned with what's in the best interest of the consumer. They're consumed with what's in the best interest of them and their shareholders. Now, with all of that said, I do agree that we should reform the clear cooperation policy rule. I don't think that we should abandon it. I think that it needs to be reformed. I think that there's a legitimate discussion to be had about whether or not we should show the number of days that a home has been on the market. I think that there's also real place to discuss whether or not we should show price reductions, and if that creates, like, is that really valuable for consumers to know? Or is it just, hey, if the home is available, like, here it is, here's the listing price, come check it out. And don't fall into, some sort of preconceived notion that, well, because it sat on the market so many days, it's a crap home. I think that we should evaluate what sort of things inherent to the MLS hurt home sellers and potentially hurt home buyers alike and make those changes. But I believe that we can actually make those changes and reforms and improve a system that by and large is a good one and works and benefits consumers rather than blowing it up and abandoning it altogether. Which is funny for me to say because, as you know from my other videos and content, I am critical of the National Association of Realtors, and I look at most agents and brokerages and the NAR on the whole with a lot of skepticism. But I do think that with the clear cooperation policy and rules, by and large, they got it right. And we should be focusing our efforts on how do we improve the rules and the system that is in place rather than turning it over to private brokerages that are primarily concerned with their profits to try and figure it out. I just don't have any faith that they're actually going to do what is in the best interest of the consumer. So again, having homes listed as publicly available as far and wide as possible is what's in the best interest of home sellers and home buyers alike. That is why I am supportive of some version of clear cooperation policy continuing. I think that we can reform it, but I am highly, not even just skeptical. Like I do not like. I am distrustful of Compass and other brokerages that are trying to move away from clear cooperation. I think that they are hiding under the guise of doing what's in the best interest of sellers, and that these are businesses that are really just trying to do what's in their own best interest. So those are my thoughts on the issue. I want to know what you think. Before you go, please do subscribe to the channel, like this video, and if there's anything in here that you're like, wow, that was helpful, that I hadn't thought about it that way, share it with somebody else who you think might have thoughts or perspective on this as well. I'd love for them to engage with it too. Thanks, y'all. We'll be back soon with the next one.